The CoinWeek Podcast is brought to you by PCGS. Come to the Central States Numismatic Society show starting April 26th and see the PCGS Set Registry Showdown, collections of U.S. classic commemorative coins. It's going to be a battle between the J&L collection and the Escalante collection. Which one will come out on top? Maybe you can help decide. To learn more, visit www.pcgs.com. This week on the CoinWeek Podcast, we're going to talk to Tom Uram on coins and clubs. Tom is set to become the next president of the American Numismatic Association. As a current member of the ANA board, I can tell you that Tom has worked very closely with the association on a number of important matters in this past 2 years as he has waited for his chance to take the lead. We talk about coin clubs, coin collectors, and leading the charge to improve America's coin programs and coin designs next on the CoinWeek Podcast. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining me on the CoinWeek Podcast. And I guess it's a fait accompli. You're going to be the next president of the American Numismatic Association. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
So let's talk to CoinWeek's readers and let them know a little bit about you and how you got into the hobby and some of the many interesting things you've been involved with over the years and how that led you to this moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same similar reasons they come into this hobby and so forth. But I'll take you back to the beginning if that's okay, because I did not know my uncle all that well, but he was a trust officer at Pittsburgh National Bank, which is now PNC. And in 1972 or 3, I forget exactly when, my dad suggested that I meet him, and he gave me at that point a red book and a membership to the ANA, of which I still have the original green little card joining. And so that's basically how. And then the other thing was my mother saw an ad in the paper and said, join the George Washington Coin Club. And I joined the Coin Club because of someone seeing the ad. So I'm just throwing out there that advertising pays even today, and that people are looking still for more than just interaction as it relates to the computer and so forth. People will still go to meetings and so forth. But anyhow, so I was a teenager. I worked all through high school, all through college in a convenience store. So I was able to pick up, a little bit of change that way. Some people did it as a paper boy. I did it working at a convenience store. And my uncle then took me after he met me on the corner. Now, he didn't meet me in his office, right? He meets me on the corner and takes me up to Pittsburgh Coin Company, Gordon Dodrell, and I couldn't see over the counter. And they kind of kept an eye out for me over those years and kind of, educated me a little bit in regards to coins and collecting. Gordon was an avid foreign collector as well. So I think that has my propensity a little bit too. When I started out, I started out collecting Canadian silver dollars simply because I could afford them. And, they were only like $3 a piece, and they were different, and they had history. So I gravitated towards that. And then in the Washington Coin Club, I'd go to those meetings, and members, if my mother and dad couldn't take me to the meetings, then after a few meetings, there were members there that actually, would pick me up, take me to the meetings. And then many, many, many years later, when I became president of the organization, I was picking people up because I remembered how important it was to go to the meetings and to learn and so forth. And sometimes people can't make it, and these were even some senior people would like to come to the meeting. So we kind of worked out a carpool thing in our club eventually to be able to pick up people, and whether they were juniors or seniors or just needed a ride for some reason. I also then at that point, as you know, coins collecting and clubs in the 70s were pretty vibrant, and we probably had 50, 55 people coming to our meetings at the library. And one of them there, he actually was an exhibitor on commemorative coins. He did a really nice job regarding commemorative coins. And so I picked up some hints there. And in 1976 is the first exhibit that I did with Lincoln cents and Canadian commemoratives, and that was in New York City as a junior. And that was because someone in the coin club had, kind of like keep pushing you along. And I also ended up becoming the first junior secretary of that club. When junior members really weren't allowed to be doing anything, they kind of opened that up. So hopefully I pioneered that a little bit. And once again, from what I learned and what I got, I try to do locally here, and also try to inspire other clubs to continue on in some innovative ways to build membership. And I never really ever thought at that time, I just did my thing and did different things along the trail. I never said, boy, I want to be president of the ANA. That wasn't even in my thoughts, even up to maybe even 5 years ago. I just was doing my thing that I did on being a governor a few years back, and then being involved. And I think that's what elevated me to where I am today, is just the willingness and desire to give back to an organization that for almost 50 years has been pretty good to me, and the hobby itself. And so that's a little bit about my background, other than my schooling and so forth, which I'll give you that, I guess. The reason why I ended up in Pittsburgh was our school was thinking of closing at that time, and my mother knew some people, so I commuted back and forth. I'd get up at 7 and get on the carpool with some people. And my first class was at 9 o'clock. I went to Central Catholic, which was right near University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon. And they dropped me off down there on Fifth Avenue under the clock of Kaufman's. And they said, well, you figure your way out to get on which bus. So I got street sense real quick. And those were the days when you just, people were willing to help, and they'd tell you this or that. I'm sure it is to some degree today too, but it was a different time, and you could just let a 14-year-old, 15-year-old roam around Pittsburgh and hop on buses and different things. So at that time, Pittsburgh had about 6 or 8 coin shops, very vibrant shops in Pittsburgh. Today, that's not the case, like many cities. So I was fortunate to have experienced that, and it obviously enjoyed the whole aspect of it. So, but I'd get back on the bus by 4 o'clock, and I was down working at the store at 5 o'clock. So that's how I made my money to buy coins.
Now, you mentioned that Pittsburgh had had 8 coin shops. It's kind of interesting. I find a parallel. Usually when you hear about, let's just say like baby boomers who are in the hobby, they'll talk about how they got started in coins because they were paper boys. Like you mentioned that you weren't a paper boy, you had a relative, but many people did get in the hobby that way because people paid in coins, and they would have some astuteness about coins that were more valuable than others, and they would maybe make a little bit of extra money selling these coins at coin shops. I think for maybe my generation, which is the Gen Xers, we got into coins, and we remember coin shops because we weren't doing the paper outs anymore. People had moved to the suburbs enough where most of your paper carriers were driving cars, and they were adults in my lifetime. So we did have coin shops still. I remember in the 1980s we had coin shops. And I used to go every time I got the chance. There was a coin shop next to the barber shop we would go to, and I would always try to strong arm my mom or my dad to let me go to the coin shop so I could sort through the junk boxes of barber dimes and Liberty nickels and Indian cents, and then I even think that there were still coin shops, although there are probably far fewer of them, when the state quarter program launched in 1999, because again, when I was in the Army, there was a coin shop off of the post, and I would go down there. To this day, I don't know the name of that coin dealer. My wife and I always called him the coin guy because he had the coin shop. But I must have been, I was a guy who was down there every like 2 days, 3 days. I might not have had like $10 in my pocket, but I was
Right.
sure as heck willing to spend it on a coin back, and I would just go through everything. And the guy was so kind to me. And I remember when I told him I was moving, I was getting out of the military, and I was moving back home. And he gave me a bunch of like, double row boxes and stuff to put my coins in, and he wished me well on my way or whatever. And I still think about that. I'm sure he's long gone by now. It's been like 20 years, but I remember there were coin shops, and that was like a tangible way for like a person to like express a curiosity in coins, to get to look at a variety of coins, get to figure out what interests them, get to touch things. And that's gone. And I think certified coins has kind of helped kill that off, because certified coins are much more expensive than AU, BU slider, common date Morgan dollar. Now an MS65 Morgan dollar is gonna be maybe 100 to 150, 200 or more dollars for a common date. Whereas in the past you could go and get one for like $30 from your coin guy. And I think the only thing that really replaces that, in my experience, has been the auctions that coin clubs might have. Many of them will have a little auction at the end where the members will bring in their stuff they're trying to get rid of, and you'll have
Right.
trays and trays of that type of material. But the opportunity for someone to really touch coins in the same way that you were able to do it, or the way I was able to do it when we came into the hobby, is you have to look for different ways to do that than we had when we were coming
Right.
up.
And you bring out a good point regarding the dealers really cared about their customers. And I'm not saying they don't today, but when you walked into their store, that you were like in their living room. You know what I mean? They really wanted to, especially a younger person, they wanted to really cultivate and so forth. And I think it shows today. You see that still happening. But it's a little bit different than what experience you and I had on that. And I remember it was I had to get to Gordon Dodrell's by 4 o'clock, because they always wanted to catch the 4:30 bus. And they were also one of the ones who encouraged me to get Coin World back in the 70s and so forth. So it was always great on Thursday to get your Coin World in the mail too. That's when you had the real mail, right?
Yeah, that's when you develop those traditions, right? And that's part of building that attachment, and that really is what the coin press does, right? It keeps that fire burning, and
Right, right.
um,
I
so
eventually then and I did eventually also get Numismatic News, and I get Coinage today too, even the magazine, just because you just never know, and I want to support the publications. I think it's so it's part of the vibrancy of the experience for collectors.
let's talk about the hobby a little bit. Obviously, if people don't know or aren't aware, you've promoted the hobby in some very profound ways. Not only have you been involved with PAN, which is a very successful numismatic organization, but you've worked on legislation for this Morgan and Peace dollar thing, which I know you've talked about probably to death by now. Uh, and your intent for that was to raise funds for the ANA, which unfortunately didn't happen due to politics. But that's an unpredictable outcome to like a well-intended effort. And still collectors benefit from having those programs available. And you've also worked pretty hard on maintaining the integrity of the design that goes into America's coins and metal programs with your work on the CCAC. What drives you to do these programs, and what is your criteria for like coin designs that you think will help promote interest in numismatics?
My drive really is to just try and have the best designs possible in themes, especially that would be able to resonate with collectors, and try and make it a broad spectrum of different things. Obviously the Morgan and Peace was just a phenomenal, ended up working out. Unfortunately, could not be a commemorative because you're only allowed 2 commemoratives, and they were already taken for that year, for 2021. And that would have been huge. But also, I think that it worked out to the numismatic community quite well in the fact that this legislation enables us to do coin going forward years without having to go back for any kind of legislation. So at the end of the day, it did work out well. I'm still trying to think of some different ideas to promote a commemorative that would benefit the A&A. And the reason why I say benefit the A&A is all these commemorative programs, our collectors purchase them, collectors buy them, and they have that surcharge. And someone might not be empathetic to that particular cause, but they're buying it because of the design and the coin and so forth. But we've never really had anything that comes back where the A&A could then disseminate money for publications, regional clubs, and so forth. So that's something I'm still working on. You asked me what drives. It's just a passion, I guess, that I have. That having been a numismatic exhibitor and met friends through that, I found that telling a story, coins are history in your hands, and I think that you can make a talk at any coin club by just pulling something out of your pocket and have you knowing who the artist might have been and what the theme is. And, you have your normal "In God We Trust" and denomination, United States. But, you can talk 10, 15 minutes just about anything you want to pull out of your pocket as it relates to coins and their themes. So going forward, I just felt that the artistic design of the coins, particularly as it related to my work on the CCAC, that's one of the key things is the artistic design. And unfortunately, we can't always pick the themes. We've had good themes, and we haven't had such good themes in our opinion. That's what I would like to see happening. Going forward, I am going to try and still come up with a few more ideas. I'll lend you on a secret. I am trying to work on, and I don't know if it'll come about at all. A gentleman contacted me many years ago, and I had never forgotten because I think that it's a good idea. He's from up in, I believe, South Dakota, but he suggested a 1794 commemorative coin for the anniversary of the first dollar. So I'm working on some legislation on that right now. I don't know if it'll get legs or not. We can try. Never thought the other one would happen, and what people don't know is how close it came that we did not have a Morgan and Peace dollar. I mean, it came down to the last 10, 15 minutes essentially. But thank goodness for some people on both sides of the aisle. That legislation was tried in 1921 by Clarence Irby on an occasion, and it's called unanimous consent. And if someone doesn't even like the color of the paper, they can vote no, essentially. So we tried to make that legislation, and we did. We made it as vanilla as possible. And so that both sides of the aisle, the good part here, the problem with some commemoratives is you do get some biases into what those commemoratives are supporting, and they look at them not in so much of a favorable way. This one they looked at favorable because it was basically for the treasury. I mean, so and the collector ends up benefiting in this case. But we had a couple hiccups here and there, and the legislative liaisons at the Mint were able to work with the Office of Management and Budget and work a few things out there at the last minute. And of course, that was it passed within 15 minutes of President Trump leaving office. I mean, so that was it was right on the bitter edge.
The last good thing he did.
There you go.
So it's interesting you say about legislation that like could or couldn't happen. I mean, I remember a few years ago, I got called by the staff of a congressman in the House. I guess would be obviously in the House, but and he was trying to get my opinion about a bill he wanted to write that would create a commemorative half dime.
Oh,
And I sat there kind of flummoxed, to be honest, to reveal my true feelings about it. And on the one hand, I think there would be quite a bit of a collector enthusiasm for something as odd as that coming out from the mint, right? But then on the other hand, I was like, there are so many other things that would be better. Like if you were gonna revive an obsolete coin type, I wouldn't pick the half dime. You know, maybe you would bring maybe have a commemorative large cent and half cent in the original size or something like that. I mean, I think that if like I think collectors would go nuts at the opportunity of having a 2024 large cent or half cent, you know, that you could say yes, it's legal tender, but you know, only a fool would get, you know, get a penny out of something they probably paid $30 for.
right.
But at the same time, like, you know, you can get $50 for a gold 1 ounce bullion coin. But yeah, so a half a dime, and I told the congressman like a little bit what I thought about it, and but that I told him I'd be willing to collaborate with him if he had any other questions or anything, or if he wanted any contacts within the hobby or that he wanted to talk to. And I think the idea died after that phone call because I never heard about it again.
Well, there were certainly on the legislation, Congressman Amadei and Andy Barr of Kentucky and my senator or Congressman Guy Rushenthal. They all worked real close on making Morgan and Peace, and that they have. I think they've built some bridges there to facilitate some. So we'll see what happens. But to your point, look at the gold. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that can't afford the gold. So, but the Standing Liberty and the Mercury Dime and the Walking Liberty Gold, even though it was what it was and it has its marketplace, it starts new interest and it can ignite some different aspects of the collector and the side. So even though someone might not have been able to afford it, it certainly um, it certainly sparks that interest. And you know, one thing that I can tell you, and if I was, you know, the one thing that most people certainly don't pay attention to is the platinum series. You know, people buy the platinum and people buy some of those, you know, they don't even open the box. They, you know, they're just where they are, and you know, they only make 2,000 and 3,000 of them and so forth. But if I was the mint, I would just take those designs that are on the reverse of the platinum, which are some of the best designs ever by some artists that are just phenomenal, and put those on the state quarters. Though the platinum series is a story into itself, and unfortunately, no one gets to see it. Just like the innovation dollars. The innovation dollars are phenomenal, and I was able to work on the first 8 of those, I believe. And the actually, I had done an exhibit on Morse code, and I had put coins that have Morse code and talked about how Morse code ends up developed into the barcode. We have the barcode because of Morse code. So I'm not going to get into that. But when I wrote the page on it, wrote the article that was in the Numismatist, and then did some talks at coin clubs about it, I put on there, it would be great to have a series of innovation coins to be able to talk about, you know, who made the a particular, you know, whether it's the telephone or whether it's a cotton gin or what, you know, who made these American innovations. And it took a while, but the mint picked up on it.
So I keep banging my head against the wall on this topic. People who've listened to this podcast have heard me go on and on about this. I've talked to Ventress Gibson, I've talked to Ed Moy, I've talked to Phil Deal, I've talked to Joe Minna, I've talked to John Mercanti, all these people who've been either designers or people who have been the leaders of the mint, and obviously the mint gets its marching orders from the Treasury Department and the Congress of the United States. So the mint director can't effectuate change on their own, but they are a voice in the room. They can be compelling. They can present an argument. They can get the ball rolling if they wanted to. I feel like our denominations need an overhaul. and I'll put it to you this way, and this is like rote by now. The purchasing power of the half cent in 1857, when it was deprecated, was about 11, 12 cents today. And they thought that was worthless. So they got rid of it. They shrank the cent, which then would have had about the purchasing power, just a little bit shy of a quarter, to its small size that we've continued to use. And you still had, I guess at the time they didn't have the 2 cent or the 3 cent nickel, but you had the 3 cent silver piece. You had the half dime, you had the dime, you had the quarter, the half dollar, the dollar, and the gold denominations. And now we essentially have a cent, which is completely worthless. I mean, they say that underbanked people may need it, but I find that honestly to be a specious argument. The difference in the purchasing power between a cent and a nickel is de minimis. So you have a nickel, which also probably costs either as much as the metal to make or more. You have a dime, a quarter, and nothing else the mint produces circulates with any real regularity. So you have two working denominations, as far as I can tell, that turn any kind of profit for the mint. You have a $half denomination, which a $half today was probably as valuable as a quarter was when I was a kid. But it's so large because it's based on the silver value it used to have. That is essentially twice the mass of the quarter. And, we shrank the dollar coin. We never got rid of the Federal Reserve note, but we shrank the dollar coin because we realized that big silver dollar size was it's not portable enough. But I think when we reintroduced the dollar, the mistake they made is that they didn't realize that the dollar didn't have the purchasing power it used to have. Right. So if I wanted to go to even find the cheapest fast food joint you can, and I wanted to pay in dollar coins, I need a roll of coins in my pocket. So it seems obvious to me that we're heading for a direction where coins essentially become non-circulating commemoratives outside of two denominations, which is does not portend of a long-term future for the mint as a circulating coin factory. Or we have to be aware that, maybe coins should be reformed. Maybe the $half should be resized so that it actually circulates. Maybe the dollar coin is a change-making coin, not like how we see it as the top coin. And there needs to be a $2 or $2.50 coin. And, again, I think we should probably eliminate the $1 note. But we're getting to the point where the coins become irrelevant because the bureaucrats and the Congress people are making them irrelevant because they're not reforming it. And you go back to the 19th century, they were reforming money all of the time.
Right.
So what gives in that stand? And as someone on the CCAC, do you feel like this is something that members of that group think about the viability of coins?
I definitely. And Charles, you bring up a good point, because to tell you the truth, you know what denomination I use a lot? $2 bill. $2 bill. I go to McDonald's, it's $1.69, $2. Because you know what? The Canadians had the $2 coin, right? And it is a functional use of a denomination. But yes, the CCAC is well aware of it. And we would have an administrative meeting prior to our meeting, and they'd give us some thoughts and ideas of different things. We'd go over some topics regarding future designs and so forth. But I remember one of my first meetings, the first or second meeting, and Dick Peterson was the director, And, I'm the new guy in the room. So it's kind of like, but anyhow, they went over how much it costs to do the cent and the nickel and so forth. And they were trying really hard to come up with a metal for nickel, the nickel coin, but they were having problems with the autograph as it would relate to vending machines. So you have all of that intricacies of the metallurgical side of the house with that. But anyhow, being in retail and having been in a retail store, convenience store, they said, well, it cost us 1.8 cents, let's say, is what it was at that time. And we're going back to 2012. And I just simply said to him, I said, well, you're in charge. Why don't you just raise it to 2 cents and be done with it? Because it's nothing more than a manufacturing facility. And I said, if you make it 2 cents, you're not going to lose any money anymore. And you would have thought that that was a sacrilegious remark or whatever. I mean, they weren't even, that wasn't even on their radar. Yet, I obviously my best exhibits have been 2 cent coins and so forth. So I'm thinking to myself, this is great. Well, another 2 cent coin. And of course, that never happened. But no, Charles, you bring out a good point. And yeah, they are aware of it. But I think the Mint's trying also to find itself in that direction. But this goes back to 2012. That was one of the first things. I didn't say much after that in that meeting.
Well, so they spanked you with the rolled up newspaper. That's okay. But if you think about it, I think the vending industry has too much sway over this issue. And if you go back to the congressional hearings relating to the Susan B. Anthony dollar in 1978. Everybody, you go read the congressional testimony, the vending industry and everybody else was talking about how great an idea it was going to be and how much savings there were going to be. And then 3-4 months after the coin comes out, all the same people have turned on it. Right. So in reality, the vending industry didn't exist when we created all these denominations in the past. Their products only exist because they figured out a way to streamline the commercial aspect of selling whatever product they have. And if the government says, okay, we're reforming the coins, you figure it out, let them do that. I don't understand why, because the vending machine chose not to adopt accepting dollar coins in most of these.
Right. And then
they've undermined the government's ability to circulate the coins. And then what ends up happening, because their machines don't take any of these coins, then the narrative gets spread that the public just didn't accept the coins. Well, the public has no reason to accept the coins because the places they typically use coins don't accept the coin.
Yeah. And now even take it 10 years later, you used to have coins where you go through toll booths on the turnpikes in different areas. You don't even have that anymore. So that's not an issue, even with them now.
Yeah. So anyway, that's I ask these Mint directors. It's like Ed, and I don't want to you can't defend. He's not here to defend himself. But I'm like, Ed, Phil, don't you think we need more higher denominations? Do you ever think about coins becoming obsolete? And if they did, they never reveal it to me. They always say, oh, no, we're just focused on making money and we don't see coins going away and we make more coins than anybody in the world. And all that may be true, but when you're making horsewhips and buggies and can you see the car on the road? And the car right now is your debit card and Venmo and Apple Pay and all these ways people pay, which isn't without its own risks, because people aren't the most tech savvy creatures. So hard money is being replaced by digital methods of transacting business.
So Charles, you and I will have the crusade to start using $2 bills.
Oh, I get them. I get them too, but I don't spend them as religiously as you do. We give them away at like New Year's and things like that.
Well, you know what? Well, there's a couple banks here locally that have them in stock, brand new. They're in stock. Just pick up a pack or pick up $50. Yeah, I find it great even traveling. You don't want to give someone $1 anymore. You want to give them 2 or 4. You don't want to give them $1 for doing something. So, and cabs, it's great with cabs because sometimes your ride is X amount. But like I said, I like it best for coffee because Well, I'm not it's a Starbucks. I'm not doing the $4 coffee just because I like McDonald's coffee better. But I can just go and put my $2 down, and the guy still gets 30 cents or whatever.
So when you were on the CCAC, did you get any insights or have any opinions on like that whole fiasco regarding the Tubman $20 note that never came out from the BEP?
No, we didn't hear much on that. To be honest, we didn't get too much on the BEP side. It's pretty it's pretty stays on their side of the house, but not much at all. Um, I um, I think that what I would like to see, and going back to real quickly, one thing that I started a committee towards the end of my term regarding coming up with a subcommittee to come up with designs, because after this legislation with Morgan and Peace dollars, I felt that the mint says that it can't do some of the political things. So I thought, well, saying we had to do this as non-CCAC members. This was not sanctioned as that. So when Mike Moran and I both did this and pounded the pavement up there, we were doing it as individuals and collectors, and that's one thing that has to be clear. But I wanted to set up a committee to come up with ideas that maybe we could get to Congress people who were in favor of coins and that sort of aspect of the mint, and that we came up with several good ones, but I haven't heard much on them. The anniversary of Churchill Downs and some of those. I think we need some animals on coins. I think there's a huge opportunity to, we do so much military, and I understand why people don't. You were in the military, you mentioned, and I understand why Congress people don't vote against it, because they're going to get, it's just they can't for a number of things. But I think we need to expand the design and themes to what people can relate to, whether that, there's a huge, the horse industry would be great for something for the disabled jockeys and things like that, to raise some funds if we were going to do a commemorative like that. I also thought dogs, being a member of the AKC and doing a lot with therapy dogs and so forth, that there's a passion out there to attract additional collectors, even if it's just for that theme. But people, once again, they pull out of their pocket and see, oh, here's a golden retriever on there or whatever. I don't know. But I came up with, our committee came up with some of those ideas, and I'm going to find out where they stand when I go down in a couple of weeks, just to see if there's any opportunities for some of that. And even flowers. I mean, there's a lot of people that have gardens, and there are a lot of people that are interested in flowers. You could do a whole series just on explaining the different agricultural aspects of whether it's flowers or hay or whatever. So I think there's a whole untapped market that the Treasury should be looking at, and legislation should be looking at, and maybe we need to get on to some themes that people really might have an interest in. It might not draw them in collecting, and I'm not really interested in drawing them into collecting. I think, Charles, like you are, I think we want them to just have the awareness of the value of what is being struck and what is being made at the United States Mint. And I think that some people might, okay, if you had dogs on coins, cats on coins, whatever, you might not attract some collectors, but nevertheless, you might have the artistic side of it, where they're going to learn and explore that breed or that the relevancy of what it's about.
Well,
So
actually,
you don't have to do it. You don't have to be a collector to enjoy what we do.
well, that's true, but I'd even put this forward. When I was a younger person, I was more into philately. I sort of had a
I started
philatelic.
stamps.
Yeah, yeah. I had
Stamps.
a stamp and coin interest. And the great thing about stamps is, at least back in the day, before you had all the metered mail, you'd get everything that would come in more or less would have a stamp on it. And
Right.
I remember just dipping the envelope in water and getting the stamp off, and drying it out and everything. And but the thing is like, I remember back in when the stamps were like 22 cents or whatever for first class mail, they did a floral theme, they did a conch shell theme,
Sure.
they did a space theme, all these themes. And the thing is, it's like, I find that people who collect in general tend to be well-rounded people about, maybe have like a little bit more than a superficial knowledge base on a whole wide range of topics. And that floral thing could be like they're interested in flowers and learning about flowers, but then they also want to collect all the flower coins. Just like I wanted all the conch shell, all the seashell stamps, and I wanted all the
Right.
space stamps, and I wanted all the, the different series that came out. And then you go and look in the Scott's catalog and you see, oh, there's a presidential series in the 30s, and they're all really neat. So like you never know like what triggers somebody to like collect coins. Like they could collect coins by way of just being interested in the theme, and then all of a
Right.
sudden that expands
Yeah.
to other things. But I will say one thing about, you're talking about non-political issues related to coins. Uh, it, the thing that I really bugs me about modern day coins at the mint. I mean, I've written articles about how it's time for them to stop doing all these military themes, because I think in some ways it's it's never a good idea for a free society to militarize itself, because then essentially you're like citizens at some point become subjects to their militarized country they live in. And we've had essentially nonstop military action for most of my adult life. And as a veteran, I feel like most Americans don't pay their fair share of that sacrifice. We're asking the same kids to go on 6 tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. And I don't know if those people are really in the market to collect these coins. In fact, most recent veterans, I don't think are like dressing up in their uniforms and strutting around all the time. I think they just want to have normal lives. I think they deserve to have them. And so I feel like that people are glamorizing the military all the time without having the sacrifice of actually having to live with it.
Exactly.
On the other hand, when I look at the fact that we have these presidents on coins forever, there's a reason it's an elected office. There's a reason why there's a term, and there's also a reason why there's a term limit, because we didn't want these people to become kings of us. We wanted them to be the chief executive of the one of the 3 branches of the government. And so Washington only served 8 years in office, but he served over, he's going to be serving over 100 years on a coin. Same thing with Lincoln. Same thing with Jefferson. Same thing with Roosevelt. It's like there's no end, and there seemed for forever to be no end in sight. And the thing is like I think once you put one of these people on a coin, it's almost impossible politically to take them off without some cohort of people saying you're trying to erase history. But we erased history every 20 years or 5 years or 2 years in the 19th century, depending on what you're talking about, whether it was a coin or a piece of paper money. They were constantly putting somebody on a piece of paper money, and then the next series would have somebody else on it, and so on and so forth, until we just got locked into this is the way it is, and this is the way it's always going to be. And we've acclimated Americans to believe that things don't change. But when it comes to the Women on Quarters series that has come out, by the very nature that like we've had gender inequality for the majority of the history of the country, and that there hasn't been, a long tradition of women being like the leader. Well, there's never been a female president, but there are fewer female legislators. It allows for a wide sweeping variety of figures to be celebrated in this series of coins. And the artistic merit of these coins is that much better, because the coins personify some aspect about these people. And again, they could be celebrities or doctors or politicians or some pioneering civil rights figure, whatever it is. But the beauty of these coins really rests in the variety of the walks of life these people represent, and the fact that these aren't all people from like way back in the distant past. There's a variety of eras that are being represented. And I think, to be frank, even though these coins only represent one of our 2 genders, it's the most representative coin series I think the Mint has ever undertaken.
Yeah, and I think, and once again, they did it in cooperation with the Smithsonian, and so once again, you bring in another aspect of the artistic viability of coins in history. I agree. And what I would do, and what I had suggested to the Mint was, though, rather than just sending them out packages of 5 or bundles or whatever, I suggested that they make not slab graded slabs, but a holder similar to a slab, where they would send them out, and you would also have a panel description of what this person was about and their achievements and so forth. I think we have a whole marketing aspect that we're missing as it regards to that. I will send you one of these. I'm doing one. I do a for our pan banquets I've been doing for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. The giveaway at the dinner has been a slabbed coin, and this year it's going to be the Ohio Innovation Dollar, which is the 2 hands for the Underground Railroad. And so it's slabbed, and it says, and it has, Pennsylvania dinner and all that, but it's accompanied by a little booklet display piece that says, a little bit about the Underground Railroad and what this coin was about. And I think that's really where we're having the dinner at the end of the bridge there was called the Monongahela Hotel. Mark Twain's been there, Abraham Lincoln, you go down the line, but it was a place for the Underground Railroad. And you're going to be at dinner, be able to look right across where it was. There's a marker there now. It's not there anymore. But there are a lot of, yes, the women's series in particular has a dimension there where you could do that. And also what I wanted to do, and I think we still have a chance to do it, is I think the unsung heroes when it comes to the artistic side of this, you mentioned Joe Menon, you mentioned John Mercanti and Dawn Everhart, so forth. Heidi in particular. Heidi, in my opinion, Heidi Wadsweet is the Laura Gardner Frazier of this era. Her artwork and coins and what she brings to the Mint is great. Not to say that there are, Phoebe and everybody, they are, but we don't. I wanted to create even a designer engraver card collection where they would have a little bit about what they've done, like a trading card type thing. And I think we need to have more superstars like that within the Mint and have them all get their due for the artistic abilities that they have.
So, Tom, I want to close our conversation on maybe a question or a topic that you maybe didn't expect.
Okay.
You're going to be in the ANA as the president in the next term, and I will be leaving the board after this term. We spend a lot of time in this hobby focusing on YNs, which is, it's a fine idea. And we're accustomed to seeing in many of our, let's just say, our institutional clubs, the older collectors, the people who have been around for a while. But I want you to make an appeal, if you can, or think about how you would make an appeal to a new collector or an internet collector who, let's say, is between the age of 30 and 50, who is definitely interested and passionate about this hobby. They've been doing it maybe for a few months or a few years, but they've never taken that interest into a social or an in-person experience. They've not become a member of PAN. They haven't joined the ANA or the ANS. They don't know how they fit in with that. Talk to them directly, because I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this aren't members of these clubs.
Right.
And they're just as interested in coins as we are. So,
correct.
So why should they be part of what in our community is worthwhile for them, and how will they add to our community by taking that step and coming out of the cyber world into the real world and being part of our experience and our culture?
Okay, Charles, that's a very good point. I think we'll define them as we'll have the frockular numismatist, and I think that the idea of being more engaged is up to both sides. It's up to the ANA and the different clubs and so forth to engage, as well as the person themselves. Now, some people like being very private about what they collect and so forth, and that's okay. But if you join and you go to a coin club, the whole idea is to give back. And so if you're a collector, I've asked people to make talks who never would have made a talk. I said, just talk for 5 or 10 minutes. You don't have to be a good public speaker. Share your interest. Another interest might be they might not want to talk about their coins, but maybe they have a bottle collection, or they have a paperweight collection or something. Get these other people that are just involved in doing other things, and do alternative hobby presentations to their coin clubs, and that way it just exposes them to the benefit of being part of a group. And one of the things you mentioned about the ANA and the branding of the ANA and what the ANA can do for collectors and so forth is something I do want to focus on. I really want to build. My theme is to build bridges. I want to build bridges with art galleries. I want to build bridges with literature, books, whatever it might be. You don't have to be an avid collector and collecting coins that are worth hundreds and thousands of dollars to be part of this community. And you if you get involved, and I have to say, I mean, I have gotten more back by giving than could ever be. It comes back tenfold, and there is something to be said about that. The numismatic community, and whether it's local clubs or the ANA or different groups you might want to get involved in, after you've been involved for a long time, and you can define whatever you want to say long time is, but once people get to know you and so forth, and you will find that they are a very caring group, and it becomes a part of your family if you want to do and be part that go that far with it. But when people asked me way back, I remember gentlemen, when I hated public speaking. I just, I was 16, 17, 18 years old. Why don't you give a presentation to our coin club? And I was, terrified. But I wrote to the ANA and I got a slide presentation and read it. And that was it. That's how it started. So I would just suggest to those who are collecting via kind of privately to maybe just step out of the comfort zone a little bit and expose yourself to the world that's out there in regards to aiding you and helping you achieve whatever goal you might have in your collector base. I think that's what I'd like to try and do.
Yeah, I think it's definitely well said. I mean, the thing is, I mean, you can take the red book if you're someone who is collecting off of it, and you may never be able to buy your own 1913 nickel. Not many people get to do that. But by being part of the community, the broader community, and coming to the conventions and getting to know people, and you'll almost certainly see one in your lifetime in person. And the same would go for an $1804. And I know, Tom, I'm quite confident your experience is not much different than mine. I mean, we have seen and probably held all of the rarities. The coins will never personally own, but in a way, like by being part of the fabric of the hobby, there's nothing that we really can't see or experience. And that is a fundamental thing I think you don't get if your entire hobby experience is you on a computer and a chat group on eBay or on TikTok or whatever. I think that's and not that those experiences aren't great, but that next level, that really being part of the fabric of the history of this hobby as that story is written, we need you to come and join us and be part of our and to give us your experiences and help us evolve our hobby. But the things that you get to experience by coming to our conventions and shows and being part of our clubs it's invaluable, enriching. not from the how you'll economically benefit from it, but just how your experience will be that much better.
Yeah, and I would say that it's a fraternity, and it's a good fraternity, and as it relates to whether you're part of the exhibit fraternity, where you're going to do and learn exhibits and educate and demonstrate different ideas through that, or whether you want to be in the book side. There's so many different avenues of numismatics that you can expound upon. It could be art, it could be all kinds of different things, but it is a fraternity. And I will say that 25 years ago, when I went into Chicago to get my 25-year medal of A&A, I knew very, very few people. I went on my own, I showed up, left, and that was it. And it's not been since the last 10 or 15 years that I've really gotten to know and meet people. And the friendships are countless. And based on the tragedy that I went through a few years ago, the numismatic community is phenomenal.
Well, Tom, I wish you the best of luck. If you ever need to bounce any ideas or anything off of me, you're more than welcome to, as I mentioned. And thank you for coming on and talking about your love for the hobby and all the kind of interesting things you've been involved with. I think it's been a great chat.
Thanks, Charles. We'll certainly be in touch.
All right, take care. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. You too. Thank you.